I'm Sherry and this is Gardening in the North. Today I harvest all my beets from my raised bed and I'm going to show you how I pickle them. Three different kinds of beets, and the reason I did this is so that when we would have beets during dinner we wouldn't feel like we were eating the same vegetable all the time. When you have three different colors of beets, it does make your plate look very different and very pretty all at the same time. So I did the Boulder beet, which is from Bessie's. It's a PEI Canadian seed company, and these are what the nice golden beets look like. Now it has a bit of an orange color to it, but I will tell you that when you cook them, they're very golden. The other one I did is the Chihuahua, and it's from the Ontario Seed Company, and it has a really pretty swirl on the inside, and when it's cooked, it's a really pretty pink color. And the third one I did is Bull's Blood. And again, these are from Bessie's, which is a Canadian seed company as well. Okay, so I'm going to separate the beets from the beet greens. I'm going to get the beets into the pot. I'm going to cook them up to about half to 3/4 of the cooking time. And the reason I do that is I do it just enough to fit the fork into the beet. You don't want the beets to be overcooked or even cooked to the way you would cook them if you were serving them at dinner, because you don't want them to be mushy when you pull them out of your pickled beet jar. Or if you were going to put them into the freezer and pull them out later, you want them to be of a good texture. So one of the things I will do is I will constantly be checking them. I will ensure that any of the big ones are on the bottom of the pot. The smaller ones will be on the top so that I can pull them out before the big ones need to come out. And I'm going to then use a paper towel. I'll pull off all of the skin, which I will show you how I do that. And then I'm going to pickle them. All of the beets are cooked, and I'm going to show you my way of getting the skins off. It's the easiest way that I know. So you just take the beet itself, and I usually run a little bit of cold water, and I actually just rub it with the napkin. And it just comes off. I usually do it into the sink, and then I pick up the little pieces afterwards, and I just keep going. And so you can see that this beet here is the deep burgundy one. So nice. And this one here is the golden one I was telling you about. This one is the light pink one. And you can just see how easy everything just comes off. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing this, and once I'm done, I'm going to bring you back and show you what brine I use. Intentions on cutting up all of the beets last night and actually showing you how I can them. However, when I went to look at my supplies, I noticed that I didn't have apple cider vinegar, which is one of the vinegars I like using. So out to the store I went, and I didn't realize until I checked the first store, nothing, second store, nothing, third store, no apple cider vinegar, that it was then 8:30 at night and that I wasn't doing any canning. So I ended up just buying regular white vinegar. I also have some white wine vinegar and some red wine vinegar. So I'm gonna change it up a little bit. As any gardener knows, pivot and change paths. Couple things I want to talk to you today before we get started is making sure that your workstation is set up so that you're not running around trying to grab everything. And so a couple of the things that you need, I don't know if you've seen these before, and this is really going to be for more of our newer canners out there. I don't know if you've seen these before, but this here is an aid that helps you to keep your jars cleaner. So you put it onto your jar, you put all of your stuff in, and it keeps the rim somewhat clean. You do need to wipe it off with a napkin and some hot water, but it does aid you in keeping it cleaner. The other thing you need are these tongs. These are what you're going to use when you're putting your jars in and out of the hot water bath. Okay, the other thing is a small bowl of your lids. So I'll just show you. And that's the lid there. So these are all brand new lids. I know that there are some different thoughts on this and that you can reuse your lids, and that's totally up to you if you decide to do that. I've chosen to only use new lids every time I can to ensure that all of my lids keep their seals for as long as I need them to. The other thing you're going to need is one of these wands, and it has a magnetic end to it. So you're going to fill up your glass bowl with, or your bowl with hot water. I have the kettle going now so that it warms up the wax that's on the lid. Now there are some mixed practices on that as well. Not everyone does that. And again, you're going to have to do your own research to determine whether or not you want to do that. The reason I do it is I want the wax to be warm before I put it onto my jar, because it aids in ensuring there is a tight seal, and that's what I want. Okay, you also want to make sure that you have all of your rings ready to go so that when you pull out your lid, you can put the ring on as well. Now let's talk a little bit about sterilizing the jars. My way of doing it, and this isn't for everybody who cans has their own method of doing it, but my way of doing it is the day before I know that I'm going to be canning, I put all of my jars into the dishwasher. Now let's keep in mind that as I use the jars and I empty the jars of its contents, they go into the dishwasher. So I'm doing it again to ensure that there's no dust or hair or anything like that in my jars. The day that I can, I actually take all of my jars and I put them into my hot water bath, and I turn on the stove and I start boiling the water with the jars in there. No lids, just jars. Why do I do this? I do this because I want to ensure that the jars are sterilized properly. I want to make sure that there is no bacteria or anything that could cause bacteria to grow once I've canned my harvest, really. I mean, we work so hard in the garden, we bring it in, we spend time in the kitchen. There are hours put into processing that one jar, that the last thing we want is for it to go bad. So I take these precautions in order to limit the amount of jars that I might lose. The other reason that I put my jars prior to filling them with whatever I'm canning at the moment into the hot water bath is because I want those jars to be warm. I want them to be warm so that when I pour the hot water brine into the jar and then seal it and put it back into that hot water, the chances of it cracking on me are extremely low. And that's what you want. Again, you don't want to go through the whole process of babying your plants throughout the growing season, harvesting, bringing it in, and processing them to have your jars crack in the hot water bath. Now, that's not to say that that won't happen, but let's take these measures and limit the chances of that happening. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to cut up all of these beets, and I am going to actually separate them into two bowls. I'm going to separate the dark purple ones into one bowl and the light pink and yellow ones into another. I'm actually going to use the white champagne vinegar on the light colored beets, and I'm going to use the darker red wine vinegar on the darker beets. So I'm going to separate them, and then I'm going to cut up a bunch of onions, because who doesn't like onions when you pickle your beets? And then I'm going to bring you back and show you how I'm going to fill the jars. All the beets and the onions are now cut up, And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the two different brines that I talked about. The first brine that I'm making is for the golden beets and the pink beets. And so what I've put in here is 1 cup of wine vinegar. And I'm going to do 1 cup of white vinegar. And then I'm going to do 1/2 cup of white vinegar as well. And then I'm going to add 2 cups of water. Next, we're gonna add a cup of sugar. And I know a cup of sugar seems a little bit extreme, but trust me when I say that it's the perfect mixture for it to cut down a little bit on the acid. The next thing we're gonna do is 1/2 teaspoon of a pickled salt. So now I'm going to put this on the stove and I'm going to whisk it until it boils. Once it boils, it's ready to go. So for the next brine, we're going to use 1.5 cups of red wine vinegar. Okay. And that's about 1/2 cup. We're then going to use 2 cups of hot water. Actually, sorry, 1 cup of hot water. We're going to use 1 cup of sugar. And then we're going to do the 1/2 cup of pickling salt, like the first one. Okay, so I'm going to get both of these onto the stove. I'm going to get them stirred up and boiled, and then once they're boiled, I'll bring you back. We're ready to fill the jars now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put onions in the bottoms of each jar. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want onion in all of the pickled beets. So I'm just going to throw some onions in each one. And again, this great funnel here allows me to just drop them in and not have to worry about them falling outside of the jar. And really, you can put in as many onions or no onions, depending on what you and your family like. So I'm the one that actually really likes onions. My husband isn't too keen on them, but I like putting them in our beets. Okay, so I'm gonna actually start filling these up with the beets. I suspect I'm going to probably not have enough of the dark purple ones to fill the jars, but let's just see anyways. So I'm gonna start filling these, and I'm gonna try and get some of the yellow and some of the pink in, because I think that once I add in the black peppercorns, it really is going to be very pretty. And then I just push them down. Again, I have a bunch of pink ones in here. And boy, can I feel that vinegar in my eyes. Okay. So I'll just try and get this done as quick as possible. So basically what I'm going to be doing is layering the jars. Layering the jars with onions, beets again. Okay, that way we get a good amount. And then I put all my spices on the top. And then I pour the brine in. Now, if you make this recipe and find that you don't have enough brine, it's not a big deal. Just make another batch of it, make a half a batch. I've made brine before and not had enough because of how many beets I had. And so what I did is I just made another batch, and if I had extra brine, I just put it into a mason jar, put it into the cupboard knowing that I was going to be using it. Okay, so we'll do that. Get these ones going. Okay. I might have enough actually of these dark ones to do 3 jars. Same. Okay, so I think a bit more onion. And it's totally up to you if you want to wear gloves when you do this. You can see how my hands are turning color here. Now I'm going to push them in because I want to fit as many in as possible. You're pushing firmly, but not enough to crush them or break them up that are in there, but you just want to make sure that you push down snug. The idea is when you put your brine in, you want the brine and the beets to be a 1/4 inch from the top of the jar edge. Okay. So you just want to make sure you push them in. Little ones. Okay, just use up one. Stick it in this one. There we go. So that worked out perfect. Now I can see that I'm going to have extra beets left over. So what I will do is place them into Ziploc bags and put them in the freezer. And on the nights where we just don't have time to make a big meal, we can pull out one of those bags, warm it up, and we have a great side. Okay, so I have all the jars filled. Now what I'm going to do is I just wanted to show you how I clean the rim off. And I also wanted to point out that if you don't have one of the little measure sticks that tell you if you're a 1/4 inch from the top, the actual line, the groove, next to the rim is a 1/4 inch. So you can use that as your guide as well. So I just wanted to show you how I clean off the tops of the jars. So I use a bit of the hot water from the lids and I just wipe it off. Grab my lid and then my ring. And I put it on not super tight, but not loose either. So you just want to do it until it stops turning. Okay, so I'll just show you another one. Again, we want to make sure we clean the rim because any spices or brine that's on there, you want to get that off so that you have a good seal. Okay. And so what I normally do is I then take the jars and as I'm going, I put them into the water. And you're going to leave these in the water from the point of boiling for 10 minutes. At the 10-minute mark, you're going to take the lid off and turn the burner off. Let them sit there for 5 minutes. Pull them out onto a cutting board or a towel to cool down. And then you're going to hear the magic sound of the popping. And that's when you know that your seals are good. One other thing that I want to point out is you want to ensure that the water level is 1 inch above the jars. Hi guys, so it's all done. Take a look. Aren't they pretty? Thanks for spending your time with me.